How's it going, guys? Today we're going to talk about one of the best budget distortion pedals that you can buy, and that is the Plumes Distortion made by Earthquaker Devices. You can pick one of these up for about $100, and considering how much other distortion pedals generally are, that's really not all that much money, especially for what you get. Starting with the basic controls of this pedal, we have, of course, the level knob, which is going to adjust your output volume, the gain knob, which is going to adjust how much drive or how much actual distortion you get out of this pedal, and then, of course, the tone knob, which is obviously going to adjust your tone. Now, this tone knob is also actually quite usable. It's not like most tone knobs where you can use a little bit in the middle and anything else is just way too much. It's even almost all the way up, or even all the way up. It actually still sounds pretty good most of the time, and all the way down can also sound pretty good. Obviously, it depends on what sound you're going for and how you're playing, you know, what you want out of it, but you can actually use pretty much the whole tone knob, which is pretty awesome. Now, in between all of those knobs, we have the little mode selector. So there's actually 3 modes on this pedal. Mode number 1 is just your basic distortion. It sounds big and full. It sounds awesome, especially with the gain turned up pretty high. It's just a good sounding distortion. Mode 2 is supposed to be, or it's technically, a clean boost, but if you turn the gain up all the way, or not even all the way, but you know, pretty high, then you will still get some pretty gnarly distortion out of it. But it sounds very different than mode 1, and I'll show you that in just a bit. And then we have mode number 3, which is going to be your more compressed distortion sound. It sounds kind of just like a wall of distortion as opposed to this big open sound. I generally leave it on mode 1 for most of my playing with this pedal, just because it's a good overall sound, but I also use 2 and 3 quite often. I'd say I probably use 2 the least. I typically use number 3 if I'm playing something that's not going to be at the forefront of the sound. So say if I'm just playing a rhythm guitar, but I want it to sound really awesome and heavy, then I'll use number 3, but if I'm playing something more up front, then I'll usually use number 1. Those sounds just kind of lend themselves to that kind of usage anyways, but that's just generally how I use those ones. Now, one quick note about the level knob. Maybe there's a way you can fix this if you tear it apart and change something, but in general, the level has to be super low for it to be even just like a normal volume. It's kind of weird, but it's weird to match the volume from the pedal being on to just your normal amp volume, because it has to be so low all the time. Unless you turn your amp down like almost all the way, then you can kind of crank this up a bit, but even then it's almost always too loud. If you have it up, I don't think I've ever turned it all the way up. It just kind of stays about there, which is just something kind of weird. It's not even necessarily a bad thing about it, it's just something to take note of. Also, if you look at this pedal on Earthquaker Devices website, which I'll link down below, it gives you all of the details of how everything works, how the different modes work, tells you a lot more about it, so I highly recommend checking that out. Alright, now let's go through a few of the sounds that you can get out of this Plumes pedal. It's sitting right here. You'll see me messing with this. You can't see it on the camera, but it's right here. Anyways, first of all, with the Plumes pedal off, just want to show you there's no distortion on the sound. It's perfectly clean sound, just so that you know this is all coming from the Plumes. So starting, of course, with mode number 1, turn that on here. I'm also starting these with the gain at about 12 o'clock and the tone at about 12 o'clock as well, but we'll mess with those in just a minute. So, as just kind of a bass line, you can hear that it's got a little bit of distortion, but it's not too much, you know, it's a good amount of just usable distortion. If we turn the tone knob all the way down, I just want to show you what that sounds like. It definitely takes a lot of the higher frequencies out, and then if we turn it all the way up, you can kind of play with the sound, mixing up, you know, what pickups you're using and the tone on the guitars and everything like that. But for the rest of this video, we're just going to leave that at 12 o'clock just for a nice consistent sound. Now for mode 1 with the distortion turned way up, let's just turn it all the way up just to show you what that sounds like. Actually, let me go from halfway to all the way. Might have to turn the level down just a bit. That gives you a very big, very distorted sound, which sounds pretty freaking awesome, at least in my opinion. It sounds really big, sounds very, very grungy, very, very distorted. And this is the mode that I use the most out of all three of them. Not normally with the gain turned all the way up, of course, but because it's just kind of a good sound. It keeps a lot of the lower frequencies in there, especially depending on how you use the tone knob. And it just sounds good. It just works for so many different scenarios. Now moving on to mode number 2. As I said earlier, mode number 2 is just a clean boost, so that'll just give you a very, very nice, punchy, bright sound. As I said earlier, mode number 2 is technically a clean boost, but you do also get some distortion. Now, I don't know if I just misunderstood what it says on the side about mode number 2, or if I have a weird one that's not supposed to do that, or if it just does that. But whatever the case, I think it sounds pretty sick. And of course, you can get a little bit more of a clean tone with less gain on there, but it still gives you a little bit of distortion, even no matter how low you go with that. So as you can see, that sounds pretty awesome. Now also, if you turn up the gain, let's just turn it up all the way and turn down the level because that's going to be loud. You get a very, very dark, heavy sound from it, which in my opinion sounds awesome, but I don't think it's supposed to do that. But regardless, it sounds pretty cool. Now moving on to mode 3. And then of course, if we turn the gain all the way up on mode 3 as well, you get a very aggressive sound. So that's most of the big different sounds that you can get with this pedal. Of course, you can fine tune the gain, the tone, the level, and mess with your guitar settings as well as your amp settings. You know, you can get many different sounds with this pedal, not just the ones that I showed in this video. But anyways, it's a great pedal. I highly recommend it. Even if you don't have a budget of only $100, I think I'd still recommend it. It still sounds great. It does a lot. It looks cool on a pedal board, if you want that. And it is also pretty small. So if you do want to put it on a pedal board, then that's pretty nice as well, that it doesn't take up a whole lot of space. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something new today. If you want to see another cool video from this channel, you can click right up here on the screen for that, and I will see you over there.